Hello again. In this video, we are going to look at how to create the Java class that will allow us to connect your Java application to a Microsoft Access database and allow you to run SQL queries that you've coded in your classes and get you the result from the Access database. So in my previous video, I've already shown you how to create your Java application and the fact that you need to import the you can access library, download, import and add the you can access libraries into the libraries folder. So having set up that much, we can now move on to creating the class that will allow you to run the queries. Okay, so first step, in your source you can create a new Java class. You may call it anything. I'm going to call it the connector class because that's what the purpose of this is. There is my connector class. In the connector class, I will actually first create some variables that I need to use. So the first one would be to create a constant value which is shows you the location of your database. So I'm going to call this db location, and it is a string, so I'm going to use the JDBC connector using the you can access libraries, and I will provide the name of my database. The name of the database that I had created was called project database. So project database dot ACCDB, because that is a Microsoft Access database. Now, we need to explore what this means. So it uses the JDBC You Can Access connector. I have not provided a location, like a file path for my database. That is simply because I am expecting my database to be in the source folder of my project. So for that, you need to double check that you know the database that you created. So unfortunately right now it is sitting inside the default location which is in my documents. I will copy it into my Netbeans location, which is this is the project that I am creating, project DB, and I'm going to leave the database over here. By doing so, you don't have to mention a file path, right? The root folder contains the database. Then I will need to create a connection object. So an object of the connection class. I will also create a prepared statement object. I'm going to call its prepared statement. And lastly, an object to keep the result of running your query, which will be called result set. I'm going to simply call it result set. Okay, so these are the four objects that you want. So firstly, you want the location of your database, you want a connection to the database, you want a prepared statement object to allow you to run the query that you are going to run, and a result set object to keep the result of the queries that you run. Okay, so obviously these red underlines means that there is something wrong. So what all you need to do is import the necessary libraries for all these. So we have to import the Java SQL connection, Java prepared statement, and the Java SQL result set classes. Now we can move on to creating the constructor of this class. So I will call it the same name as the class, and inside the constructor, I will run the code. I will write the code to connect to this database. So I'm going to put a try catch block, and the exception that you want to catch here is a SQL exception, because we are running SQL queries and you have to write the code. So I will use the connection object that I created over here and use the driver manager class and say use the get connection method, and the connection that you are going to use is into this location, right? So that object keeps the location of your database. Then using the object, now you can create your um, sorry, if you want, you may create a message box to say that the connection was successful. uh, Otherwise, you may, if there was an exception, you can simply say error while connecting to the DB. So that's simply the constructor which uses the driver manager class to connect to your database. If it successfully connects, you will get this message in your output window. Method number two is to now run SQL queries, SQL queries in the into in run the SQL queries using in Microsoft Access and get the result, right? So mostly run the select queries and obtain the result. So for this, you will write a public method, obviously, because you are going to you want to access it in other classes. This method is going to get you a result set object, and I'm going to call this run query method, run select query method, for example. And this method would want you to pass the SQL that you are wanting to run. So in this, again, I'm going to put in a try catch block. We want to catch a SQL exception. And in here, first, the SQL string that you have passed as a parameter into this method needs to be prepared using that prepared statement object we created earlier. So I'm going to use that prepared statement object and use the connection to prepare the statement for this particular SQL query that you want to run. Now, once your statement has been prepared, you can get your result set object is equal to the prep statement dot execute. You will use the execute query method to execute the statement that you have just prepared. When you execute this query, because it's a select query, you are going to get a bunch of data back. The bunch of data is going to be put inside the result set object, and at the end of this process, you can return your result set that we said we are going to return in the method's definition. If something goes wrong, you may output error while retrieving data message to the back to the user. Okay, so this method run select query is simply to run select queries. There are other types of queries also that you may want to run, which is your sorry, we just need to finish this. If nothing is returned, let's return a null object over here. Other type of queries, update queries, insert queries, delete queries, etc., where there is no need for us to obtain a result set back. For that, we will create a different method called public, and this method doesn't return anything. Sorry, it's commenting. Delete queries. We will create a public method. This method doesn't return anything, and I'm going to call it run insert update delete query. This is the name of the method. It could be any one of these. And then inside this method, again, we want to put a try catch block, create a SQL exception, or catch a SQL exception rather. And if there was an exception, we want to error while executing the insert or the update or the delete query message to the user. Okay, inside this method, again, we will have to prepare the statement and we will have to execute the statement. So I will use my prepare statement object and use the connection and the prepare statement method to, sorry, we will still have to pass the SQL query that we want to run, and we will prepare the SQL string and put it in the prepare statement object. And using the prepare statement object, we will simply execute, instead of saying execute query, we will use the execute update method. And this method, sorry, execute update method. So in this method's definition, you can see it is used to run queries such as insert, update, delete, returns 1, the row count for string data manipulation, otherwise it may return 0, right? And it can throw a SQL exception. I am not going to obtain the value that it is returning. If you want, you may catch it inside a integer variable and return it back to the user or any other method that is calling this particular run insert, update, delete query method. So this is the setup of our connector class, the objects that we need to be able to run SQL queries from a Java application into Microsoft Access and get the result that has been produced there back into your Java application. Thank you.